And our next speaker is coming to us from Knoxville, Tennessee. He is T. Ryan Hughes. Mr. Hughes is the Executive Director of the Tennessee Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs and the Boys and Girls Clubs in Tennessee. And one of the reasons why I've invited Mr. Hughes to this program is that he is a graduate of our MPA program at LMU. Beyond that, though, and sort of why I think he was attracted to our LMU program is that he works in nonprofits, and our program, our MPA program, has a focus in nonprofits. We have courses in nonprofit leadership, nonprofit marketing, board development, fundraising. We have a course in grant writing. All of these courses that look at nonprofit, and I know a lot of students today are interested in careers in nonprofit organizations. So if you would like more information about that, please check out our website at lmunet.edu/MPA. Again, T. Ryan Hughes is coming to us from the Boys and Girls Club, and he is going to be talking to us today about the impact and response of Boys and Girls Clubs during the COVID-19 pandemic. So with that, I hand the floor over to you.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Dr. Atkins, for having me. And I'll start sharing slides here in just a few moments, and also have a video that I think will be helpful. But kind of before I get started, I just want to say a couple of things. Once, really appreciate Dr. Atkins, LMU, for hosting this event and having this. I think this is just a really cool way for people who are potentially tied to the university, but also others really from around, to be able to expose students and staff to different various things. And I was kind of looking at the lineup, and man, I wish I could have participated in the whole thing. And then also, I just want to say too, just kind of knowing the audience. I know this is recorded, and some of you all may watch this, but for those that are watching live, I know it's after lunch. I know it's on a Friday, so I'll try to make this as exciting as I can. I truly have a passion for what I do, Boys and Girls Clubs. The kids that we serve, we'll kind of walk through that and what that is. Some of you all may be really familiar with Boys and Girls Clubs. You may have even been a club member growing up. Others may have no working knowledge whatsoever. So when I start my presentation, we're going to kind of go through, what is Boys and Girls Clubs? What's that niche? And then we'll really dive into the pandemic, our response, and kind of climbing back out of it. But just wanted to say all that at the beginning, and appreciate those that are watching live, and really look forward to hopefully having some questions towards the end. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and start this PowerPoint slide from the beginning. So as Dr. Atkins mentioned, we're going to look at the impact and response of Boys and Girls Clubs during COVID-19 pandemic. Again, I'm the Executive Director of Boys and Girls Clubs in Tennessee, which is a statewide 501c3 organization. So all clubs that are in the state of Tennessee, from Bristol to Memphis, are a part of that 501c3 organization. We provide grant dollars that are both public and private, and from foundations, and partnering with our local clubs to carry out a variety of different things through that vehicle. Also, the Tennessee Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs, we just had our day on the Hill this Wednesday. We employ a lobbyist. We're a 501c4 organization, and so that's really my background prior to coming to Boys and Girls Clubs a little over 5 years ago. Was in the government sector, both federal and state government, and when in state government, working directly with the state legislature on behalf of the administration. So that's what we do through those two vehicles. Again, all of our club sites across the state, and right now we're around 119 club sites. We're a federated model. Those are ran by 20 local organizations that have their own boards. I also just got back from my statewide board meeting in Nashville, which was on Tuesday morning. So it's been a heck of a week, and really looking forward to kind of closing it out with you all today. First, I just wanted to kind of we're going to go over the mission and vision of Boys and Girls Clubs, and talk about that. Then we're going to kind of have a Tennessee overview, so you all can kind of see what that footprint looks like. Who are we serving? A BGCA programming overview, so again, you can really have a grasp of what we do inside of our club settings on a day-to-day basis, after school and in the summer. And then we're going to look specifically at our COVID-19 response on some two big areas where we focused. We did a lot of things, but overarching at a lot of our clubs, we did a couple really neat things. I think you all are going to find very fascinating, and really the results we got out of it were just incredible. That credit goes to all of our frontline staff across the state. And then we're going to look at the childcare crisis in Tennessee. And we'll talk more about this, but I know all of you all probably on this call, if you're working or if you manage people, you know that there's a workforce shortage. And steps have been taken by public governments to try to encourage people to go back to work. I'm fortunate enough to sit on the Tennessee State Child Care Task Force. We're trying to think about innovative, outside the box solutions to address this issue. But Boys and Girls Clubs play a role in that, and on access to affordable, quality childcare. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll close off with some questions and my contact info, because obviously in my role, my door is always open. So if anyone ever has any interest about Boys and Girls Clubs on how they can get involved, or if they would like for their son or daughter to attend, be happy to help try to answer any of those questions. So going into our mission, I know a lot of people may be kind of rolling their eyes right here, mission and vision, but this is something that's not just words to me. So to enable, I don't have to even read it, right? To enable all young people to reach their full potential as productive, caring, responsible citizens. That's at our core. Okay, that's what we're all about. We want to put them in a better position to reach their dreams. And those look different for every kid. Our vision to provide a world-class club experience, so it gets at what we do. Everything that we do within the Boys and Girls Club setting is mission driven. So I challenge my staff on a day-to-day basis. If we're doing something, can we tie it back to our mission? Can we tie it to our vision? Does it support those things? If it doesn't, why are we even really doing it? What's the value added? And so that's just something that I put in the slide because my staff at probably the first year they worked with me were tired of hearing it. Over 5.5 years later, it's like, yeah, it's a part of our culture. So our impact, our formula for impact, this is Boys and Girls Club of America evidence-based formula for impact. We help our clubs implement this in a variety of different ways on a day-to-day basis. But really, it looks at some some key priority areas. We really focus on academic enrichment. And so we do that through numerous programs. One of the larger ones in the state of Tennessee is 21st Century Community Learning Center dollars. Those are federal funds that we advocate at the federal level with our Tennessee delegation and all other states and delegations across the state. We advocate for those pots of funds to be available, because those go then down proportionately to states based on the number of children enrolled in LEAs across that state. So in the local school districts, there's a formula, and they get an allocation at the state level. The state then can choose to do that and do with that a lot of different things, but really the focus of 21st Century Community Learning Centers is to provide before school, after school, and summer enrichment that aligns directly to what is going on inside the school setting. And so we have MOUs with all LEAs where we have club sites that get this funding. So we know if that young person, let's just say they're in 3rd grade, but they may be in 2nd grade on a reading level or English language arts, but they may be in a 4th grade math level. We'll know that, so we can curtail through computer programming, through tutoring, through small group studies to really help either bring that person back on their grade level or help them excel if they're already excelling, to continue to excel in that subject matter. And so we employ a lot of former teachers, teacher aides, things like that work in our academic enrichment rooms. Typically, that's one of the first things that kids do when they get off the bus, when we pick them up and bring them to our facilities, or if the schools provide transportation and bring them there, is we work on homework help, and we work on what's been going on in the school earlier that day. There's a really good line of communication back and forth between our staff and the teachers. And quite frankly, in the state of Tennessee, when teachers now, there's pay for performance. So what the outcomes of their students are directly tied to potentially their pay. And I mean, that's the way the system's set up. There's an incentive there for teachers to know where their kids are going after school. Are they just going home to sit in front of the TV? Or are they going to play sports? Are they going to a Boys and Girls Club? Are they going to a YMCA? Are they going to another after school provider? Where are they going? And teachers really want to know that these days. And so that relationship's only getting better. But there's other things that we do inside the club setting. A lot of people just think about the gym and swim, but it is important. We teach kids how to swim. We help them work out some of that energy that they have, whether it's playing basketball or whether it's playing some other organized sport. But inside the club setting, if it's not just free time, if we're doing something, it is set up in a way where there's going to be continual learning. And so every single rotation, there's a learning component, whether it's math or some sort of reasoning or some sort of academic focus. We also have inside of our club setting healthy lifestyles. So that gets from everything about teaching kids on how to make a meal at home, and in fact that going to a grocery store, even though with inflation at 7.5–8%, is still cheaper than going picking something up through the drive-through. It's about learning how to do your own laundry and to cook and clean and all of those things. It's about knowing what you put in your body affects your health. It's knowing that tobacco and smoke and vaping is harmful. What the harmful effects of those are, drinking or abusing opioids. It's all driven so that you're hopefully building resiliency skills, building lifestyle choices in a way that gets the information in front of the young person so that they can make the best decision. And what we're going to talk about here in a minute, why all of this is so vitally important, is because of the primary individuals that we're serving. And so we'll get to that slide here in just a minute. But we've got all of those areas. We also have workforce development. So we have a focus on soft skills all the way up to paid internships, where high school kids are getting those really critical skills, everything from culinary to nursing camps, to welding camps, to hospitality camps, and then are partnering with local businesses and universities of higher education, including LMU. In the Knoxville region, where I'm based, the local club organization there has a great working relationship with LMU, and they actually go up onto the campus in Harrogate for a week and do a nursing camp up there that is just phenomenal. Kids get to work with cadavers and work with other young people who are enrolled in your DO program. Which is really great exposure to many of these kids who get to see individuals who have maybe similar backgrounds to them, or look similar to them, or have some sort of interests that they have, and say, hey, this is something maybe that I want to do when I grow up. I didn't realize that this was possible for me. So our agenda for America's youth, these are set by our Boys and Girls Club of America, but are vitally important. So again, looking at that out of school time, safer childhoods, health and wellness, education, career readiness, and leadership development, equity, and inclusion. Those are buckets that, quite frankly, we've been in all of those spaces for a very, very long time. A lot of them have a new term or a new name or a catchy kind of way of saying things. But we felt that it's always important to remind folks of the work that we do and kind of the lanes that we're in that are directly tied to our mission. And so you can see some really cool statistics here about our impact. One thing that is, and again, we'll talk about this here on the next slide when we look at who we serve, but 54% of club alumni at the end of the day, after leaving our facilities, say that the club literally saved their life, not figuratively, but literally saved their life. If it wasn't for the club, they don't know that they would still be here with us. And so You know, I think sometimes that stat can kind of make me take a step back about the vital work that we do. So Tennessee fact sheet. So this really takes a good snapshot of, okay, what does a club member look like in the state of Tennessee? Who do we serve here? And this data for so it's 2021 fact sheet, and you'll see the 2022 fact sheet here in a minute. You know, because we're in the nonprofit community, our data is a little bit slow. So this is actually 2019 data for the most part. And there is a little bit of 2018 data on here, but almost most of it's 2019, and I'll point that out to you. And then when we go to the 2022 fact sheet, I put this in here because it's pandemic data, which really is what we're going to be talking about. Our 2021 data is about to be released in the next couple of weeks. We're finalizing that right now. So what I wanted to share with you is this. So pre-pandemic, we were serving almost 53,000 youth statewide, okay? Just over 32,000 of those were what we call club members. That means they're in our club on a daily basis. So average daily attendance, they're there Monday through Friday, you know, from when we pick them up at 2:45 or between 2:45 and 3:15, depending on the local school district, the LEA, when they let schools out, until 6, 7, 7:30 at night. We vary in that back end range depending on local workforce demands and when certain shifts get off and things like that, or if traffic's really bad in one area. At that time, 70% of our kids qualified for free or reduced lunch. They were TANF eligible, so temporary assistance for needy families, which is a kind of a threshold around you know, economic status. That's really who we're talking about here. We do have middle and upper income folks that kids that we serve, but the vast majority of the families and the kids that we serve are economically disadvantaged, low income youth. You'll see in the state of Tennessee at that time, we had 100 local club sites. We had, you know, almost 1,400 staff. We were in urban, suburban, and rural areas. You can see we're, you know, relatively evenly divided across our state. And then something else I wanted to point out is if you look there down towards the bottom, our operating income, and that was based on 18 figures, was just over 40 million statewide. 27% was generated from state, local, and federal government. So let me tell you a little bit about our business model before I move on to the next, because I think that government funding, I think, depending on where you are on the side of the aisle, some people may say, wow, that's a lot, or that's not as much as I thought it should be. So let me just kind of tell you about our case for that a little bit. So most of these kids that come to the Boys and Girls Clubs pay zero to attend. 100% of the kids that come to the Boys and Girls Clubs is scholarshiped in some way. A portion of the cost for their attendance has been scholarship. No one pays 100%. Now, there are some that pay the full amount that's posted, but many times that's anywhere from $5 a week to $25 a week. It's not anything excessive. And the reason for that is most of our clubs and most communities know what that threshold is. They know that in some communities, if we literally charge $1 a week, parents are going to make the decision for their kids not to go there. And the long-term adverse experiences that those kids will have with not having a caring adult in their life after school, it will be detrimental. The societal costs on the back end of kids being more likely to end up on TennCare or incarcerated or having some sort of health issues due to the fact that they're not being nurtured after school and in the summer. It's worth us to figure out a different way to kind of subsidize that cost. And so the primary way we do that is through people like you all who are watching this today, individuals. They believe in our mission, or maybe they grew up as a Boys and Girls Club member. And they say, you know what, I'm going to donate, you know, $10 of every paycheck to the Boys and Girls Club locally, or I'm going to donate $1,000 a year to this cause, or I own a business and I'm going to be a sponsor for their local, you know, golf event or whatever. And I'm going to pay, you know, I'm going to step up for $2,500 annually, and I'm going to be a sponsor of a whole. And so we go out and we private fundraise. But when you go to some of our local, communities, particularly in rural areas, if you think, not very far away from, well, and where LMU is located, we've got a new Boys and Girls Club coming to Claiborne County. And the local community there saw that there was no childcare, literally none in that community, other than a few mom and pops that handled a couple of kids a day after school and in the summer. So the local economic development group there and businesses said, hey, if we're really going to get serious about recruiting industry to this community, we've got to have capacity around childcare. And so we're going to go out and we're going to raise $500,000. And that small community did that. And that they should be applauded for that. But here's the problem. Well, then we've got to find a facility if there's one that's vacant, or build a new one, whichever's cheaper, and retrofit that old building or build that new building. We've got to buy a bus if the school's not going to provide transportation. Your $500,000 starts going really, really quick. And just as I said, we have to raise money to undergird the ongoing expenses of the club site as well. So if you burn through all of that money just to get it open, you're not going to have enough revenue coming in from the fees that you charge, if you charge any at all, to meet your ongoing expenses. And so that's where a public-private partnership really makes a lot of sense. But there's many other ways that comes into play as well. And we'll talk about a few of those here in a minute. So here's looking at the 2022 fact sheet. Let me just check my time here. So we're looking at the 2022 fact sheet. This is 2020 data. So you'll see there where youth served across the state, which was around 53,000, dropped down to 33,000. What I'll say is it's pretty amazing, really, that we served that many kids during the middle of the pandemic. And we'll talk about some ways in which we did that. There's a lot of youth serving organizations that were for-profit and non-for-profit, and just community-based organizations in general, that, for lack of a better term, kind of just stuck their head in the sand and said, hey, we're just going to let this pandemic thing pass. Hopefully it'll be over in a few months, and we'll get back to doing our work. We said, we all jumped on a call when the world shut down. Local board leadership, my statewide 2 boards, local CEOs across the state. And we said, listen, we're going to try our best in the safest way possible. We'll talk about some of those in a minute, to keep trying to meet needs in our community. And that's going to look a little bit different maybe than what we typically do. But that's going to be our end goal. You'll see that, as you can imagine, with the economy taking a huge hit, our economically disadvantaged number went from 70 to 77%. And some of that may be driven, on the fact that maybe some of our middle and upper income folks stayed home with their parents and chose not to go into the club setting. And you've got more of that need that's still showing up on a day-to-day basis. You'll see that our club sites pre-pandemic went from 100 down to 86 that remained open. It didn't mean that those others went away for good, but during that year, 86 of them were open. Our club staff took a hit as well. Most of that was individuals saying that they didn't feel safe working anymore, and just like everybody else, the Great Resignation. It's just I've reevaluated my life. The pandemic's here. I want to stay home with my kids. I don't want to go to work anymore. So that wasn't us firing a bunch of people. I just wanted to kind of make that for the record. But here's something interesting. Our overall operating budget, you'll see, took a jump up. It was more costly to do business. And we'll talk about the reasons for that here in a few minutes. But look at that government funding too. It took a jump up. 39% of that was from state, local, or federal. We'll talk about that here in a minute as well. So the pandemic. Tennessee's based clubs transitioned from normal club operations to serving youth and families during the pandemic to kind of a new model. So in some cases, there were some club sites of those 86 that never shut their doors. They continue operating completely through the pandemic. They got local clearance from local health departments to remain open, even when the mandatory orders were for everyone else to shut down. So they continued to open. they actually expanded their hours. So instead of serving in just after school when school shut down, they started opening it sometimes at 5 and 6 in the morning to try to meet the needs of nurses and doctors who were having to be on call and go in earlier and earlier, and LPNs and other medical providers, as logistic folks started working longer hours to try to expand their services of getting goods and services to areas. They expanded those. They worked with local businesses that shifted some of their working hours to make sure they're meeting those needs. So it was very early in the morning till late of the evening. There wasn't one set time for when clubs should or shouldn't be open. Expansion of food services. So we worked with a lot of nonprofits and school districts across the state. Federally, a lot of your food programs were given flexibility in the way in which food could be served. For example, most of the food programs, USDA, that we participate in, this is a really sad thing, and it's for safety reasons, so I understand why. But at the end of the day, when we provide that full hot meal to that young person after they come to when they come to our club site after school, if they don't, if let's say there's mashed potatoes left over in the bucket that we haven't served yet, we have to throw them away. We can't give those to a homeless shelter, or we can't let anybody else eat those. It's just the way the food program, and we have to account for how much we throw away. That we try not to do that, obviously, but that's just the rules. Well, a lot of those type of rules that sometimes you're like, I understand why, these are rules, but also, man, it just is so frustrating. A lot of those were lifted. So food was able to be given and taken off site. So we worked with a lot of nonprofits that were not open, who had food that was going to expire. And they said, hey, we're not going to open. This food's just going to go to waste. We worked with them to funnel that food to our families who were in great need during the time. So clubs started doing that. So they started reaching out to families and saying, hey, when you pick your kid up, let me know if you would like this, and this, because we have these foods or these milks or these things that you can take home with you and keep at home to help feed your families. We distributed PPE not only to obviously our club staff and required it of our kids coming, but also to our families out to communities as well. And so we got masks donated, and we worked with a lot of distilling companies to get large things of hand sanitizer. We worked with the state of Tennessee to get some of their PPE around cleaning supplies and things like that, because we were basically cleaning our clubs constantly. We had staff that were, 20, basically almost 24 hours a day. At any hour the club was open, they were rotating areas and they were cleaning it when kids were not in there. We changed our model. So we started doing ratios of 9 kids to 1 staff. And they had to stay in that cohort the entire day. So when they moved from the gym to the academic room or to the arts room or whatever, they didn't interact with any other club staff or any other club kids. So for contact tracing purposes, it was easy if we knew that if one of those kids ended up and was sick, we knew who needed to be quarantined. There were head check thermometers at all of our club sites out front to check temperatures. Sign in, sign out sheets were out front for parents and caregivers to sign in, sign out, so they never came into our facilities. All distribution of mail or other type of things come to the club were met outside the facility. No individuals from the outside came in. We try to do as many of our required trainings online to keep staff from having to travel or having to be exposed to large groups. And there were personnel challenges and all of that. The exposure, the liability side of things. We worked with Tennessee to form a partnership during the pandemic that we'll talk about here in just a second. And we asked the state if they could indemnify us to protect us, because we were going to be carrying out a service for the state. And unfortunately, our Tennessee state constitution, even though the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance wanted to do it, and so did the governor, it would have required the state legislature to come back and do a special session, which is kind of hard to do when there's a pandemic going on, and the whole state was shut down. Um, let's see. And so we're a federated model, as I said earlier. So we're working, in concert under our two umbrellas of our statewide entities, but also with local decision makers as well. So we worked with the State Department of Human Services for a partnership called the Emergency Child Care for Essential Workers Program. And so we had been working with the department for some time on their TANF buildup, and really pivoted when the pandemic happened into this program here. And so at 82, at the time, 105 club sites that were open chose to implement this program. This program was free childcare to anyone in the state who met the governor's executive order around what was defined as an essential worker. A lot of those jobs were around healthcare, as you can imagine, logistics, things that were determined that kept the economy going. Banks were one of those. There was a whole host of them, and I'm not going to run down that whole list. But what it required of us, Boys and Girls Clubs, to do was, and again, this is not necessarily our typical population, right? Some of these folks are, some of them are not. But it required of us to take some documentation on the front end that gave proof that individual was an essential worker, things like pay stubs, business cards that could be tied back to a website or something that had further proof that they were an essential worker. One of the two caregivers, that the parents, had to be an essential worker, and then that young person qualified. We typically serve kids ages 5 to 18 in the after-school setting. This program, because it was federally funded and the federal requirements, it was ages 5 into the day before their 13th birthday. So once they turn 13, they can no longer participate in the program. I will say we served some 13-year-olds, but it wasn't under this program. We just took care of the cost for those families, particularly for those that had a younger sibling that was there on the program. They met the requirements of the program, but we obviously couldn't turn them into the state and get reimbursed. So we negotiated. The YMCA's did the exact same thing, a daily rate with DHS to serve those kids in those 9-to-1 ratios, with the additional cleaning, with the lower capacities. So again, our club sites, their capacities, were cut, in many cases in a fourth of what they typically could serve safely, because you had to do it socially distanced, right? And you still got to have room for programming. So, our costs went way up of doing business for serving fewer kids. And so this is where a true public-private partnership really came in, and we were able to provide a service that, quite frankly, was not being met. We had waiting lists at the majority of our essential worker sites of families who were out there doing great work, providing services to everyone with huge risks, and unfortunately, we're not able to be enrolled in our program. Again, expansion of hours, and so all of this is going on, and on a weekly basis, we're turning in rosters to the state that has all of that backup on it, and then they're turning around and reimbursing us for that, or not reimbursing, but we're getting that fee for service based on those numbers of kids served. So you'll see here kind of some just high level outcomes. The program was over 72 weeks. It's public knowledge, so that it was a $26 million program. It was ran over 72 weeks. We served 8,363 kids. A lot of those were every single day. There were some that dropped off and some that dropped on, came on. And then on an average week, this here, don't hold me to this, but I went back and I didn't do all 72 weeks, but I threw that into a program real quick, and it was around 2,200 was kind of our sweet spot of how many kids that were on the program that were being served on a weekly basis. So another thing that we noticed real quick, and you better believe that the state knows it now, and I'm sure they knew that it was happening at the time, but was the COVID-19 learning loss, kind of the summer slide. Most kids we are helping combat during the summer, they're out of school for a significant amount of time, right? And it's different by LEA, so I'm not going to say number of weeks because someone on here will say, well, hey, that's not the number of weeks in my school district, and because they're all a little bit different, but they're out several weeks, right? We can all agree on that. And after 2 or 3 weeks, studies have shown that kids kind of start losing a little bit of what they've learned because they're not constantly exercising the brain and learning more things and building on what they've learned on. And so in the club setting, that's what we try to do. We want summer to be fun and it to be a break from academic enrichment, but we do include academic enrichment in our summer programming because we've seen that helps. It helps our club kids kind of be ahead of the pack starting back at the next school year among their peers because they've kind of continued to build on what they've learned that prior year. Well, kids had been out for a significant amount of time during the pandemic. And so so they missed the last part of the school year. And so we're in spring now, and the whole world's kind of shut down and our clubs are open. We've got this captive audience. And I was approached by one of my former employers, Bill Haslam, and his wife, Chrissy Haslam, and they have a foundation. They have many, but they have one, the Bill and Chrissy Haslam Foundation. And Jamie Place is their executive director, and Jamie Simmons, excuse me, she's married. Jamie Simmons is their executive director, and she and I have worked together before. She worked for the Department of Education as the chief of staff. She had a real concern, as did Bill and Chrissy, around the fact that kids were not didn't get the last 6 weeks of the school year. And now they've going to probably have all summer, and it may extend into next fall without having any type of academics. And so they created what's called the Tennessee Tutoring Corps program. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit about that. And they first went to the school districts to see if schools across the state would be willing to open for a portion of the day and try to get kids in there. And Department of Education just wasn't interested in that, and the LEAs weren't interested in that. And so they reached out to me, and I said, heck yeah, man. I mean, yes, absolutely, I'm interested in this. Because number one, the kids we typically serve, statistically, not necessarily Boys and Girls Club member, but statistically, kids who are Black and brown or economically disadvantaged or non-English learners, challenges around academics. That's just what the statistics show. And so we know that a good portion of the kids that we serve meet kind of those parameters. And so that's why we feel like our work in this area is so important. And so they explained kind of how they thought the program could run. We then took that and kind of molded it, and they worked with us so it really fit inside the club setting. And so the premise of the Tennessee Tutoring Corps was this. The foundation would recruit college students who were home because the world was shut down, that some of which may have been in school at University of Southern Cal or at Northwestern or at LMU or at ETSU or UT or everything in between. But they were back home in their communities. So that may have been in Knoxville. It may have been in Murray County in Columbia, Tennessee. It may have been in Greenville. It may have been in Memphis, wherever their home base was. They identified and recruited those young people. They had to have a 3.0 GPA. They had to be at least a sophomore in college. And those were kind of some of the parameters around it. They had to apply through the program. They were then trained. They then paid for each of those college students to have background checks done on them, because no one can interact with any of our kids without going through a series of background checks. So the foundation paid for all of that. And then once they were trained, they deployed them to their local closest Boys and Girls Club site that was open during the pandemic to provide small group tutoring. So 2-to-1, 3-to-1, and they created basically the last 6 weeks of school work that was missed by those students in ELA and in math. and created workbooks. We then formed a partnership with Edmentum, which is one of our partners that provide a computer-based academic enrichment program. At the time, we were using Study Island, which is a lot of what LEAs across the state had been using. We heard about a new program they had called ExactPath, and it takes an assessment on the front end of the student and really can tell you where they are on grade level, regardless of what their true grade level is. And then in ELA and math, so it would help those tutors know, hey, let's group students that are kind of like-minded together on grade level, so into small groups, so that you don't just have, if you have a group of 3, you don't just have one that's answering all the questions. They're all kind of on the same grade level in that area. So we allowed that data to drive it. The foundation then contracted out with Vanderbilt University's Dr. Laura Booker, who used to be head of curriculum at the Tennessee Department of Education, to be our third-party evaluator of the program. So she kind of built out some parameters as well in which we had to work within. And then we ran it at our club sites. We trained all of our club staff as well on the onboarding process, and they worked with those tutors as well, and they worked with kids as well. Again, curriculum, grade specific, tutor training, recruitment of tutors, background checks, all of that done. And then I'm going to go to this next page. It's a little bit hard to see, but it is fantastic. So over a 7 to 8 week period, you're talking about college age students. I mean, when I was in college, I was fortunate to be a part of a U.S. Senate campaign. And it was, most of us were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, and we ran a U.S. Senate campaign and won. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but young people can do amazing things in life. They just work hard and put their their focus to it. And this is another example of that. And that's why I say that, because, sometimes people don't let anyone, if there's any students on here, don't let anyone ever say, you still have enough experience. You're not old enough to do this. That's BS. And so here it is. And this is a credit to all of those college students across the state and our frontline staff over a 7 to 8 week period. You're not talking about trained teachers here working with kids, okay? And look at the movement on the national percentile for ELA and math from our starting point of our kids to our end point, and our growth was tremendous. And I can send all this stuff back out to y'all, and I have additional stuff, but again, that's through a third party evaluator. That's not Boys and Girls Club saying, hey, we did good here. It's a third party evaluator who was, quite frankly, shocked at the results of the program. And so just wanted to say that. And I get real passionate about that because, and we actually ran that program again in 2021. The Tennessee State Department now has something called TN All-Core that they're running in local school districts, and actually just opened up a competition that I've been hounding them on for community-based organizations as well. I'm fortunate to serve on Tennessee Department of Education partnership task force, and I'm like the squeaky wheel on everything that they roll out. I'm like, this is great for LEAs, but also community-based organizations are in this space, so allow us to help you as well. So they are doing that now, and they should be applauded for that. So childcare, affordable, accessible, quality childcare across our state. It's no dirty secret here. It's pretty much right in front of our face. Y'all know that the current administration, meaning in Nashville, Governor Bill Lee's administration, made the decision back several months ago now, when there were employment shortages. There's different ways you can encourage or disincentivize people from not working. They chose that time to cut unemployment benefits. And I think I'm not getting into the politics of is that good or bad, but I'm assuming their reasoning for that was to say, hey, we want to incentivize people to get back to work. Well, what we've seen in our communities is really probably a bigger driver that we're seeing is, hey, if I go back to work, can I find childcare, number one? If I can I afford it too? And affording meaning, does it make economic sense for the hourly or salary that my job's set and skill can request and require for me to go back to work, can I make enough to offset what that cost is of my kid to go somewhere, whether that's birth to 5, which is, childcare, or if that's after school childcare and summer childcare. A lot of people think, well, if kids are in school, then you've got childcare taken care of. Well, that's not necessarily the case. If school gets out at 2:45 or 3:15, some people don't have the flexibility to say, hey guys, just pause here. I'll be back to work here in a little bit, in 40 or 35 minutes when I get back from picking my kid up and drop them off at the house. So that's really what we're talking about here. And I was fortunate to be in Northeast Tennessee, speaking with Ballad Health CEO, I guess Sunday of this week, and they're investing, I think, several $1 million in childcare, and thinking about even running their own childcare centers at the hospital, because of their LPNs and nurses and doctors just can't find childcare. So when businesses start having to try to innovate and figure out the solution, it's a real problem. And they're rethinking. A lot of businesses are rethinking their model. When you think about employee benefits, does it just mean healthcare? Does it not? Maybe it means childcare, or maybe it means a portion of childcare taken care of. And you've got, like I said, I serve on the childcare task force. You've got some businesses thinking about going in and building cooperatives where they're trying to help, kind of come together and form a co-op that they can put a childcare center at, so that all their businesses can then offer that to their individuals that work there. And so where I'm going with all that is that Boys and Girls Clubs, we're not the silver bullet and be all end all of anything. And that includes childcare, but we do play a role in it. And so Boys and Girls Clubs is really, as we're coming out of the pandemic, we now are around 119 club sites. So you saw how we went the dip down, and now we're dipping back up. A lot of that is through private investment. Like I talked about, there in Claiborne County, really close to LMU's main campus there in Harrogate, not just right down the road. But it's also through public-private partnerships. And so, particularly when you're talking about a lot of federal funding that's gone down to states, that's one-time money, or it has to be spent out over 36 months or 30 months. There's lots of different parameters on a lot of them, American Rescue Funds and CARES Act dollars, and all, additional ESSER funds. There's all these different pots of funding, and they all have these different parameters on it. But one thing that Child Care Development Block Grant dollars and others in the state of Tennessee typically have not been utilized for, because they can't, and that's infrastructure, buying buses, retrofitting buildings, building new buildings, things that could stand the test of time, be there forever, and typically is a one-time cost. And so we're really taking the approach of making some public requests around one-time expenses around that infrastructure to scale out, to be able to serve additional kids, so that we can try to better meet the needs of the communities we serve. And so that's really the approach we've really taken. So, Tennessee students are still trying to rebound when it comes to that academic piece. Again, I talked about, we may, as a group across the state, decide to participate in the Teen All-Core program. Early literacy is extremely important. It's a space we've been in for some time now, but rethinking that and looking at new strategies, because all the studies that we see around early literacy that are vitally important, and I'm going to wrap up here in a second and take some questions, but around, if you're not reading by the end of 3rd grade, all of the social determinants of health and all of the adverse challenges that you're going to have later in life are so hard to really come back from. The deck's really stacked against you. SEL and ACEs, listen, it's been a really stressful 25 months for all of us, right? I mean, everybody on this call. There's not many people I've talked to recently. I'm like, how's things going? Just wonderful. We're lucky to be alive. The work, we have so many blessings, but goodness gracious, right? Lots of stress. Kids feel that too. They take it from their parents, from their caregivers, from those that are watching after them. They themselves experience stress. And so We all know the important work around adverse childhood experiences and how the brain's developing and how those things can cause, long-term impacts. And so we need to make sure that we're building the right resiliencies within our kids and providing them the supports and the outlets if they are facing some of those stressors, that they can cope with those things in an appropriate way. Financial constraints, right? So we need to help try to remove some of those barriers. We've just sent into the Department of Human Services. We were a Plan F Tanning grant statewide. We landed that, and now we're trying to get the pilot. And we're really building that based on community navigators. And I can't go into too much detail there because we haven't made the pitch yet, but really trying to help families weed through that bureaucracy and try to get themselves in a better position so they can get off government support. And then again, leveraging public funds to expand. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions we may have. And just want to say thank you all. Hopefully my rambling has been somewhat beneficial and entertaining.
No, it's been great. So let me see. I'm going to stop your share. So we've got time for a couple of questions. I was going to ask, so we've gone through COVID-19 and cross your fingers, we're not going to go through a similar thing like this coming up, but is there anything that you can point to that your organization has learned about itself that they've realized, oh, we've gone through this time of stress and holy cow, it's a good thing that we now know this about ourselves, because if this happens again, we're a little bit better prepared?
I think two things, there's probably numerous, but two really big things that we took away from it. One is efficiencies around work, work environment, workplace communication. Zoom is great. Is that great for everything? No, not at all. But can it save some costs and create some efficiencies? But more than that, connection to youth, getting where they are in their space, interacting with them, not only in our physical space of our club setting, but also in more of a virtual platform as well. I think those things are great. Another kind of lesson learned that's a little harder pill to swallow, it's this. I talk about that culture and meeting that mission, enable all young people to reach their full potential as productive, caring, responsible citizens. The Great Recession taught us who really believed in our mission. The staff that said, see you later, I hate that for them, but maybe that was the best thing for some of our organizations. Maybe those that stuck it out and, like myself, have a few more gray hair at the end of the day because of it, because we've had to kind of pick up the slack. And all of those staff who stayed around should be rewarded for that. And we're trying to do that the best we can. But those are the ones, hey, they've got my back and I've got theirs. They're a part of our team and they believe in something that we should have this shared value.
We have a question in the chat, which is, when does the Claiborne site open? Where will it be located? And can we donate directly to benefit that site?
Yes, you can directly donate to benefit that site. Boys and Girls Clubs of the Tennessee Valley, which is based in Knoxville. I can get you, but you can go to their website and you can earmark that money for that club site. So you can say, I want it to benefit the work of that community. So the timing of when it's going to open, I am crossing my fingers that it is going to be early this fall. The reason for that that I crossed my fingers is it really was supposed to be this spring. As you all know, the cost of building has gone through the roof. And so we were working with some public funders in addition to private to retrofit a building on Walter State's campus. And because the cost basically tripled from like the month before when we got the quote to then the architect signing off and us starting, we said, whoa, we've got to back up. So I believe now it's going to be in an old high school there or middle school. And forgive me for just not knowing the exact site, but I can get that information to whoever is asking that. Connect me with them and I can get them all the information they need about it. But I'm really hopeful this fall that we're going to be serving kids there in Claiborne County.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question, and that is, we're going to have many undergraduate level students listening to this talk, probably on recording. and I know you've bounced around a little bit in your career from your education and your different political background, but for someone that is really passionate about working in nonprofits, what kind of foundation should a student pursue? What kind of courses should they be taking? What kinds of things should they be knowing, and what should they be doing?
Yeah. So, that's really a great question. And I'll say this, we run our organization like a business. I think one thing to think about is, and I say that from the aspect that, that master's in public administration is extremely important. It provided some skill sets that really I didn't have, particularly around budgeting and things like that. I'm good at math already, or decent anyway. But it really, that process of board development was extremely important when I went through the program, that just were areas that I didn't really have a lot of background in. And I'll say, getting back to running like a business, I mean it in this sense. The better financial position you can put yourself in, the better you can serve the individuals you're trying to go out and serve. And so if you're every year in the red, you're not going to be able to meet your mission very, very well. And so, making smart decisions on a day-to-day basis around management of staff, around carrying out your mission, all of those type of skill sets. But I think the other thing is having a true understanding of who you serve, having an empathy for them, because it's not none of our clubs should it ever be what Ryan Hughes thinks is best for our club kids. It should be our frontline staff, who are trusted, caring adults that are embedded in those communities, having conversations with those parents and with those community members, so that it's very specific to meet the needs of that community. Every single one of our club sites is a little bit different. Yes, we do all of the same overarching programming. We have all the same safety standards. It's all of them are boys and girls clubs. They're chartered organizations, but all of them have their different little niches. And that's because every community has their own weaknesses and their own strengths. And understanding that and not trying to make a one shoe fits all approach, I think is our little secret to our success.
All right. Well, thank you. Uh, Before we sign off, how can we find out more about what you specifically are doing, and where can we find out about your organization?
Well, our website, www.bgctn.org or ta.org, either one works, takes you to our website that has kind of our two houses there on it. Also, my last slide, if we want to go back to that, has my email on there. Happy to share that out. I know that's a little scary, but happy to share that out with anybody. And if you reach out to me and I'm not the best person to answer that question, I'll get you to someone on my staff who can get you to the right person. So, just I'll say I'm a proud LMU alum, as we've spoke about. Dr. Atkins does a great job. The MPA program is something that I think everyone listening should at least give consideration to. There's so many ways you can branch out. I'm in nonprofit. I've had a background, as I said, kind of in the government sector, but also healthcare administration. Being a city manager, or working in state government. There's so many different ways that make that degree very, very practical. So I would challenge everyone to check it out.
Well, thank you. And if you go to the events page for Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, if you go down to the schedule, you can find Ryan's email address there as well, and along with his background and a little bit of information about this talk that you've just viewed. Thank you again, Ryan, for